Good evening, everybody, and welcome to today's virtual Wormwood Scrubs Charitable Trust Committee meeting. My name is Councillor Alex Sanderson, and I chair this committee. Before we go to introductions, I'd like to remind everyone here of a few housekeeping points. Please keep microphones muted unless you are speaking. Please wait as much as you can until I call on you before speaking, and could everybody introduce themselves when they first address the committee. I'm going to go to introductions first. It's always chaos when I ask people to introduce themselves, so I'm going to go down in a list. So can I go to Councillor Stanton first, please?
Good evening, everybody.
Thank you very much. Alfie? Do you just want to say who you are and where you're from?
Hello, good evening. My name's Alfie Kerrigan. I'm one of the senior law enforcement officers for the north of the borough.
Lovely, thank you very much. Councillor Kwan?
Good evening all, I'm Councillor Bora Kwan. I'm Councillor for College Park on Old Oak Ward and a member of the this committee.
Thank you very much. Faye?
Good evening, I'm Faye Thomas. I'm one of the co-opted members from the Friends of the Scrubs.
Thank you very much. Harriet?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Harriet. I am an Assistant Committee Coordinator.
Brilliant. Good to have you with us. Kelly?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Kelly Gooch. I'm Head of Finance for the Environment Department at the Council.
Thank you. Osama?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. My name is Osama Elamin. I'm the manager to the Wormwood Scrubs Charitable Trust.
Thank you. Simon?
Good evening, Chair. My name is Simon Ingham. I'm the Assistant Director for Parks and Leisure for Hammersmith and Fulham Council.
Thank you very much. Stephen?
Good evening, Stephen Whaley-Cohen, Chair of Trustees of the Friends of Wormwood Scrubs and a co-opted member of this committee.
Thank you. Vicky?
Hello everyone, I'm Vicky Abel. I'm the Wormwood Scrubs Development Manager.
I think we had a latecomer and I can't work out who it is. Oh, Mark. Mark, hello.
Yes, hello. Good evening, Chair. Mark Raisbeck, Director of Public Realm. I'm responsible for Parks and Leisure, but in addition to that, I cover highways, waste management, and culture, libraries and event services. Pleased to be with you.
Thank you very much. And I think as ever, we are joined by the brilliant Debbie.
Good evening. Hello, everyone. This is Debbie, Committee Coordinator. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Brilliant. Lovely. Thank you very much for that. And again, if I could remind everyone to be muted if you're not speaking. Brilliant. So item 1, apologies for absence. I don't think any apologies for absence have been received. Declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations of interest? Speak now, if ever hold your peace. Fine, thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting. Are the minutes approved? Are there any matters arising? Stephen, is this? I think
yes. It's a matter arising, really. There's a piece about the consultation relating to the low-level wooden fencing around the equipment on Braybrook Street, and I know this is ongoing. And it's actually a wider point than just this consultation, because I know that Osama welcomes, and indeed everybody welcomes, responses from whoever is interested. But I think it would be worth putting in place a proper system for inviting responses to consultations rather than hoping that somebody sees a notice or asking the school to speak about this particular project. And I'd like to suggest that Osama put something together, not urgently, but because I think the consultations could be more effective than we've achieved so far. There must be a number of organisations and individuals who are interested in what goes on the Scrubs, who could properly be invited to respond, and very often they won't because it's not in their direct area. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I will prefer chair if that's all right, as opposed to chairman. Stephen, just to pull you up on that. Thank you. So I think that's something we can take away and think about how we manage that, and obviously make sure that the voices of the people who use it are being well represented there as well. But thank you for that point. Any other issues, matters arising with the minutes, or are those approved? I'm going to take that that's approved. Lovely. Thank you very much. Great. Manager's report. Could we go to the manager's report? And I think item 1 is Vicky.
Thank you, Chair. Vicky Abel, Wormwood Scrubs Development Manager. So number 1, to update on HS2 works on site, which is really the SBS site. Since our last meeting, the fencing to the site has been removed. The vegetation has had a good chance to establish now, since it took a while to get the fencing taken away, but it is looking good. We've also had a mown path cut through the area to try and direct footfall through to one route rather than people walking all over it, and that seems to be working really well. Future work in this area through the master plan will be the creation of swales and hedging to the kind of foot of the embankment inside on the scrub side of the chain link fencing that runs along there. Having the fencing taken down now has allowed us to get closer to the embankment, and we've started to arrange for the Japanese knotweed to be treated. So the first phase of that work is having the access routes cut. We've had 3 access routes cut from the bottom of the slope up to the top of the embankment, where there is quite a bit of Japanese knotweed. And so we're progressively working on that. The contractor to treat the knotweed will come in next week. And we've got signs up on the chain link fencing to say that that is happening. So that'll be the first phase of work really in treating the knotweed. And after next week, we'll work with the contractor to get a programme of work for the next kind of 3 to 5 years, which and we'll have to monitor how well that does in eradicating the knotweed from the embankment. So we'll be gradually working from the middle of the embankment westwards, because we haven't seen any signs of the knotweed further east on the embankment.
Thank you, Vicky. Any questions on Stephen?
Yes, Chair. You referred to hedging on the scrub side of the chain link fence at the right moment. And we're all aware that some of the chain link fence at the eastern end has gone, whether removed by HS2 or otherwise, and it wasn't in their agreement to put it back, and it's not in our budget to put it back. But I would like us to think about whether we can or should or need to replace it, both to protect what's on the embankment and I suppose to prevent people going onto the embankment. I don't think it's a very long stretch, but it's something I think we should look at, please.
I think we can get someone there to look at the extent that needs replacing. I think some of it is still in quite a good state of repair and does its job in protecting the embankment, especially with the amount of vegetation that's grown up around it. I think it does work quite well. There are areas that have been kind of patched up with harassed panels and things like that. So, I mean, we can look at that rather than replacing the whole stretch, especially if we are going to introduce kind of hedging along there, which will help to protect it as well.
I would second that. I think there are other bits that also need some work as well. I was up there on Sunday, and as you kind of follow the path around the back by the big tree, there's a bit that's come down by the Network Rail site as well. So I think there are other bits that could do with a look at and a bit of replacing. So let's put that onto the programme of works to look at. Thank you.
I definitely agree. I was suggesting patching and replacing, not a complete removal and start again. That's not at all necessary.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on number 1? Okay. Number 2, staying with Vicky, the AEM Master Plan Procurement and Planning.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to try and share my screen now. Hopefully it works. so that I can show you the programme. Can you see that now?
I can't.
No.
No, okay.
Not yet.
Farmer, can you help me with that? Okay, that's great. Thank you, Osama. It is quite small. So yeah, I'll thank you. That's brilliant. Perfect. Okay, so if we look to the left-hand side under October and go down to number 3, planning application, this is the bit that we're really working on now. LUC are putting together all the documents to support the planning application, all the drawings. They're going to have to commission 2 reports externally, which is the flood assessment and the construction management plan. They will be commissioned once we give approval to go ahead. We need to I need to get a report approved before they get the go ahead, because there is a slight fee increase in their contract. So they're working on that. They will give us then 2 weeks to review those documents before hopefully the planning application is submitted on the 8th of December. And that, I would say, is the very best case scenario. It doesn't really allow much time for any delays in any of that. So that, I'd say the 8th of December is the earliest that the planning application will be submitted, with the 13-week decision timeline on that. That would take us to a decision on the 15th of March if all goes smoothly and there aren't any major objections to the planning application, and also is reliant on OPDC determining the application in the agreed timescale, which is 13 weeks. And then that would, if we then start a period of tendering the work from when the public consultation element of the planning consent happens, which was around the 26th of January. If that tendering goes well, there's potential that the contractor could be on site by May next year. But I think that is really the very best case scenario that we can hope for, really.
Okay, thank you. So that will be going to April Cabinet for approval. Okay, thank you. I can't see everyone, so if anyone would like to ask a question or comment, do jump in. Faye.
A couple of questions. If it's being implemented in May at the earliest, and there's going to be contractors on site, how might that be affected by the restrictions on works taking place during bird nesting season and things like that? And other question was, you said the fees have been increased. Is that, I missed the first part of the sentence. Was that land use consultants that have increased their fees? And if so, by how much?
Yeah, so for the fees, it's not that they've been increased. It's just that at the outset of the project, we hadn't thought that planning permission would be needed. So they didn't, that wasn't included in their tender. So they just hadn't tendered for that element of the work. So we had a fee of around £2,000, which is just to, you know, have meetings to determine whether planning was actually needed or not. But now it's become apparent. Obviously we do need planning permission, and it's a major planning application which involves quite a list of documents to be got together and quite a lot of drawings and so on. So yeah, so that's why their fee has been increased, and that's what we need approval for. And the second part of your question was the work is likely to take 12 months altogether from whenever it starts. So whenever it does start, the works will determine the type of works that happen at that time will be determined by when we start on site. So we can do the work that doesn't involve, disturbing wildlife and birds in bird nesting season. So we can work on the firm footpaths and things like that and do the work that's away from those most sensitive areas.
Thank you. Any other questions? Fine, thank you. Okay, item 3, local nature reserve establishment.
Yes, I'm afraid there's not much to update.
Sorry, Chair, sorry, could I do actually have a question, sorry.
Sure, yeah, of course.
If you don't mind, it just regards the planning application. What happens if the planning application is rejected?
I think it's unlikely to be rejected because we've asked OPDC for pre-planning advice and we've followed that obviously we're totally following that. We met them on site to walk the site with them and go through all the proposals with them, and the advice we've had back from them has been mostly very supportive of the proposals, so it's unlikely to be rejected. Whether there's objections to the planning application is another issue, and we're trying to think about what those objections might be and work into documents such as the design and access statement, which is a really important document in the planning, within the planning documents. Just work into that, how we are justifying all the proposals within the plan.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, that triggered lots of thoughts. Can I go for Faye and then Stephen?
Yes, quick question. If the plan is rejected on the basis of if there are objections, would the application need to be resubmitted in order for it to go through? Would that then extend the time period that it would take before it can be implemented?
Yeah, I think if there are major objections to anything within the planning application, they have to take that on board, and it may then be that the planning application has to go to a committee. So, and I think that would definitely increase the amount of time it would take to get a decision. Yeah, I don't know by how much, to be honest.
Stephen?
Unmuted.
Yes, sorry, I was failing to unmute. Tech incompetence. I think you should expect some objections, because I know some people who are strongly opposed to certain things, and I would guess they will make objections. And as you know from other discussions we've had in the past, it particularly relates to the proposed pond.
I think we are expecting some. That's not going to be a surprise. I think what we will say, though, is that obviously this has been fairly extensively co-produced with huge ways of the community, as many people as we could engage as possible. Obviously, it's over 200 acres. It's a shared space for as many people as possible to use, and hopefully everyone will find at least one thing they like about the plan to be supportive of, as well as, I'm sure, the bits that they're less keen on. Thank you. Okay, nature reserve. Vicky, I think we're staying with you for this one.
Yeah, there's not much to update on this one at the moment. The documents are still with Natural England to review, and I think also with our legal department. So in the meantime, we are working on getting consultation documents together, but there's not much more we can do until Natural England have reviewed those documents.
Fair enough. Thank you. Any questions on that? We'll wait until we know a bit more. Fine, thank you. Fine. Item 4, Limper Christie Stadium maintenance of athletics facilities, and over to you, Simon.
Thank you very much, Chair. As we all know, one of the key sporting features of the Limper Christie Stadium is the 8-lane all-weather 400 metres athletics track, the associated field events, as well as some perhaps well less known, the 60-metre covered sprint track on the northern boundary of the stadium, together with the floodlights that allow it to be used all year round. Following review of the athletics track, And at the last track certification meeting, it was highlighted to us by UK Athletics that the track was nearing the end of its useful and fit for purpose life. We have not resurfaced the track since 2005, 18 years ago, and they require urgent refurbishment. We have started to go through a procurement exercise working with the UK Leisure Framework to help supply quotes and supporting the specification document that's needed to be delivered. Estimated costs for replacing the track, improving and making the flood lighting more environmentally friendly using LED lighting, and looking at the indoor sprint track resurfacing as well, totals approximately just over £500,000, £550,000. At the same time, the site management have been looking to meet demand from school and resurface the 2 netball tennis courts on the southern boundary that were previously used as a compound for our neighbours at the hospital. So in total, the works to refurbish and update and make these facilities fit for purpose is estimated at £650,000. The council has agreed to support this project with a contribution of £250,000 from the recently launched King's Coronation Youth Fund, and the Wormwood Scrubs Charitable Committee is asked to match that contribution at a further £250,000. The remaining £150,000 can be funded from existing capital balances held by the council to give us the total project pot. I'm happy to answer any questions, but the committee are asked to approve a contribution of £250,000 to the refurbishment of the associated athletic track and facilities.
Thank you very much, Simon. I think this is really great news. Obviously, the running track has been in dire need of replacement for quite a long time. So this is a great way that it is going to be repaired, and we can have the next generation of athletics runners on site training there. And wonderful news that we got the match funding from the King Charles III Coronation Fund to celebrate his ascension to the throne. Stephen.
I think I can say that the Friends will be strongly supportive of this. I certainly am. It accords with an important element in the paper we were allowed to bring to the committee 2 or 3 meetings ago. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? Dominic? Sorry.
Yeah, it is a comment, really. First of all, I'm very supportive of this. I think it's fantastic news. It's really a question about sort of scope, really, which is, whilst there's a large amount of money to be spending, and it seems to me, say as a layman, to be a large capital works item. Has any thought been given actually to extending the scope of the works to be done? While this is being done, because sometimes it doesn't cost double to do twice as much if you're doing it all in one go. Will be coming back in a year's time being asked for more money for further improvements that could actually be brought into this.
You're going to love the next item, which is talking about some improvements on site.
Yes, yeah. Well, that's kind of partly sparked this, and I just wondered whether are they linked or are they separate? Should they be linked? Should they be separate?
They should, and correct me if I'm wrong, Simon, be happening in approximately the same time frame, depending on procurement and all the other complexities that seem to go with trying to get anything done within the frame of local government. But yes, so that will be happening. There is, of course, also the Kensington Dragons work, which has also been kind of going along at the same time as well. So there's quite a comprehensive programme of work going on alongside the master plan. So there'll be quite a lot of very positive changes to the scrubs happening over the next, I'm saying 18 months, hoping it's 18 months.
Yeah, because there was also the Harriers improvements. I don't know what's happened with that, if that's still in the background, if that's happening or not. I'm just kind of conscious also that we're being asked to provide quite, a lot of funding. So my secondary question is actually, how is that funding accounted for? Is that taken out of 1 year? Is it depreciated over 3-4 years from our budget?
On the first point, as far as I'm aware, I think the Harriers have just parked it at the moment, just whilst they're kind of reevaluating and thinking about their financial priorities, but the conversation is still kind of ongoing with them. Kelly, I might hand over to you for how that's going to be reflected in the accounts, sort of baptism of fire for your first appearance at Wormwood Scrubs Charitable Trust Committee.
No problem. So particularly with regard to the match funding, the 250,000. Because that hasn't been made as a decision yet, what you'll see is if that is supported today, we'll then show that in the next committee report as coming out of our cash balances. So essentially that's where it comes from, and you'll see when I cover off my finance section later, cash balances are healthy at the moment. The council's contribution obviously sits outside of the contribution that the Scrubs needs to make, so that will get accounted for in the council, and then the Scrubs will contribute to that. The trust will contribute to that. Does that answer your question?
No. My real question was, when we have our projected outturn for the year, will we be incurring all of the expenditure when the cash is actually paid out, or is it going to be amortised?
Apologies. Yes, so we will accrue for spend. So we will make sure that spend is recorded in the year to which it relates. So the timing on this will be important to our overall cash balances. But I believe the work, like Chair said earlier, is happening in the next 18 months. So yes, some more likely for this financial year and some in the next financial year.
It's not going to be spread over a 10-year period or so. It's not going to be spread over the length of the track, for instance.
No, we don't tend to we would call this capital charges or depreciation. If it's the council's accounts, we don't tend to record it in such a way in charity accounts, as far as I'm aware. But yeah, that is something we might need to have a look at.
Thank you. That does answer my question.
Sorry, thank you.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments on this one? Okay, are we happy to approve? Good. Lovely, great, approved. Thank you very much. Great. All right, item 5, managing the changing rooms at Liverpool Christie Stadium, everyone's other favourite topic. Simon, I think back over to you for that one.
It is. Thank you very much, Chair. As we know, the changing room block at Liverpool Christie Stadium is not in the best state of repair and has been getting worse gradually year on year. It's got to such an extent at the moment that following assessment by the council's facility management team and building regulations, that we've got to a state where we either need to prop up the changing room wall, external wall, particularly in the northwest corner, or on having had that advice, we asked facility management to look at what it would cost to demolish the changing room block. Following work over the summer period and reports presented to council officers, it was determined that the most effective solution is to proceed with option 2 above, which is to demolish the majority of the changing room block. Not all of it. We would retain an element which is the electrical substation, and there's a kind of a natural break in the whole block with the space leased to Kensington Dragons Football Club for their changing rooms, and also the community room and kitchen area that's not in use at the current time. At the same time as demolishing it, we would be purchasing some new porter cabin changing room facilities, which will be bespoke changing facility porter cabins. There'll be 9 of them, and they will provide for toilet and changing and showering as required, both for the facilities within the Liverpool Christie Stadium and also those sports pitches on Wormwood Scrubs. There will be some residual value to those porter cabins depending on how long we need to use them. They could either be resold in the future, depending on the long term of the facility at Liverpool Christie Stadium, or they could be retained. They've got a life of at least 15 to 20 years. So this is a medium term option for providing for the many potential users of the improved sports facilities. Just picking up on the previous councillor's question, between ourselves, Kensington Dragons, we will be replacing all the current sports facilities, upgrading them and making them into the best fit for purpose artificial grass pitches and athletics track that we could have at the modern time. So these changing room works would complement those improvements, and the committee are asked to note the work that the council will undertake. Approximate timetable is the capital maintenance plan budget has been approved, and it's going through procurement processes, both for the demolition and the procurement of the bespoke changing rooms. We would hope that would be completed by Christmas time, with then implementation subject to lead-in times at the start of the new calendar year. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Simon. Has anyone got any questions? Brilliant. Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. This is very good news too, I think. It's essential. I wondered what work was going on simultaneously for the longer term, because I'm sure you don't want porter cabins for the 10 or 15 years that their life is good for. You want something more permanent, which obviously will cost more. And I wondered what the thinking was about that.
Chair, would you like me to answer?
Sure. Yeah.
Yep. So Stephen, thank you. Following the very helpful paper that your colleagues and yourself presented at the last meeting, we're obviously reviewing the longer term options, and within the council across both the environment and the economy department, and a further paper will be brought back to the committee in due course to look at the longer term. We believe we can't sit around any longer with the changing rooms in the current state that they are. We know that any longer term plans will take minimum of 3 years to deliver, and possibly longer, and therefore we feel that it is a good, whilst it sounds a lot of money, it is necessary to continue to provide the school children and sports clubs that use those facilities and have for many years and been very popular, with modern fit for purpose facilities for the foreseeable future, whilst any longer term vision and scope is prepared and brought back to this committee.
Thank you. And I think the timing is important as well. I don't know if committee members remember, but we've got a bit of a Christmas tradition of getting Legionella in the changing rooms over the festive period whilst the heating's all off. So having this done hopefully means that by the time the new year rolls around, we will have facilities in place that people can use the changing rooms, use showers, have some loos there, so it becomes all far more usable. And so I hope it's right to say this, but we're also exploring the possibility of having some pretty decent, accessible loos in there that the public will be able to use during the day as well, which feels like a positive step. Any other questions on this? As Stephen says, I think it's really positive and great something's being done with it, and looking forward to seeing them in situ. Thank you. Okay, item 6, Kensington Dragons. Osama, are we over to you for this?
Thank you, Chair. Osama Elamin, the manager to the trust. So on this item, as Simon had mentioned, a number of different capital schemes that will be happening on site at the Linford Christie. The Kensington Dragons resurfacing of the current football pitches, along with the extension of another 11-a-side pitch, will accompany the athletics track and the changing room facilities being replaced. So in terms of the stage of works we're at now, the Kensington Dragons are just about to finalise their last set of specification documents. So myself, Simon and Adam, who is the facilities manager for the Linford Christie site, we'll be meeting with Chris and Martin on the 1st of November. At that meeting, we'll agree the final specification, and we'll also talk through a construction plan for the contractor, which will cover sort of access routes and how they would conduct their works. In line with the previous update given to the committee, they are on time to deliver within the 6-month time frame that we had identified, and that was also in consultation with the sports bookings team as well. So we're hoping that we can crack on with that between November and March of 2024, and another update will come to the next meeting.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Osama? Thank you. Stephen, was that a hand up for a question, or was that an all good? Fine, all good, thank you.
All good.
Fine. Okay. Item 7, renewing a license to occupy the temporary school site, so KAA. Osama?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so we all know that the temporary school site was constructed on the demise of the trust. This was in response to the tragedy at Grenfell Tower in 2017. So this temporary school site is earmarked for the use of Kensington Aldridge Academy. They have the planning permission to remain there. And so the Department for Education would like a renewal of that, an extension of that license for a further year. And so in line with the previous year's inflation of 3.8%, our valuation colleagues had suggested a similar increase. And the school have requested an additional 150 pupils to be applicable to use the site in line with the school's slightly increased intake as well. So this committee is asked to approve that extension and I'm happy to field any questions as to whether or not you'd like anything else added to the license as well.
The committee reports. Faye.
Just a quick question. Is the buildings are currently unoccupied? Is that correct? I just wondered who's responsible for the sort of current maintenance of them, because they've got quite a lot of like rat traps and some of the windows have been broken at the moment. So I just wondered if they are planning to go back there. Is someone currently maintaining it, so it's not going to cost huge amounts to repair things and such?
Sorry, I'll let Sam answer that.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so we have an annual inspection, which is in line with the planning permission that was given to the Department for Education. I have noticed those kind of broken windows and kind of things not looking as spick and span as they could. So the next inspection is due for January 2024. We, as the landlord, more than welcome to obviously go in there and undertake any surveys that we might want to. We're not restricted by the terms of the license or the terms of the planning permission in order to do so. We will be given notice 6 months prior to any school moving into the site. So yeah, the fact that it has remained empty does offer a few issues in terms of facilities management, but I am due to take that inspection in the new year. And I'm happy to report back to the committee on that as well.
I think that would be great. But things like the broken windows, who is responsible for that? Is that us or is that the school?
That is the school who's responsible for that, yeah, in terms of paying for the cost of maintenance.
Thank you. Any other questions? Should we move to the vote? Fine. Committee like to approve the lease extension for another year? Great. Okay, approved. Sama, sticking with you, fencing the new children's play area, and I know we've had a public question about this as well, which happy to take. Over to you for this item.
Thanks again, Chair. So in terms of the consultation exercise that had gone underway, the preference among the three options that were presented was to just fence off the newest play area. On the note of the question that was given right at the beginning of the committee in terms of process around consultation, so that is usually coordinated with the communications team in the council, as well as myself coordinating with the local stakeholders. So the Old Oak Community Centre, they have their consultations bulletin board, which I tend to put bulletins up on, as well as kind of engaging face-to-face with numerous different stakeholders, local residents, local business owners, the primary school as well. In terms of widening that consultation, I'll ensure that we increase the date range on Have Your Say on the council's website. And so the initial preference was just to fence off the new playground area. In light of the new public space protection order that is in force across the borough, all of the playground areas in the borough are considered no dog zones. And so the initial desire to have the fencing around the playground was in order to manage that kind of interaction between dogs and children who could be using the play facilities. In consultation with the LET team, the law enforcement team, we thought it best to monitor compliance with the public space protection order and have a look at some of the data that we're generating in that area as well before commissioning any new constructions. In addition to that, some of the children at the primary school, as well as local residents, have raised desires to install some new equipment, some more additional equipment to what we have in the new playground, for slightly older children, but also for slightly younger children as well. So I'll be expanding the terms of that consultation. And as I say, I'll be liaising with the communications team to make sure that that's on the council website, and so that residents, not just in the College Park and Old Oak area, but sort of further afield in the borough, can also have their say on what we get on the scrubs.
Thank you. And the question was about, do we need to have fencing when the PSPO is already in place? So this feels like a sensible interim option to say, well, let's see how well the PSPO is working before we put any fences in. Any questions, comments or thoughts on that from the committee? Faye?
Yeah, I think I raised this in contact with Osama already. One of the issues is that the PSPO is very hard to enforce, and having spoken to a lot of parents who use playgrounds in the area, particularly people with under fives who are slightly harder to control, there is quite a lot of dog poo around the playgrounds, and there's quite around the Braybrook Street playground, and there's an issue with large out of control dogs running into the area as well. What's my question? Without a fence, it's basically impossible to do anything about toddlers and dogs coming into contact with each other. I appreciate that there is a law that says that they're not supposed to be in the area, but you can't really dogs or toddlers don't generally abide by laws in place to tell them where they can walk and can't walk. So I know this is an issue for the law enforcement team as well, but because we don't have a 24/7 force in operation to police the playgrounds, it seems really silly that we can't just get a fence to protect us, to put around like the equipment that's designed for under fives. Basically, that's my question. My friends with small children and myself will go to other playgrounds elsewhere because of this issue. It's just really sad, because it would be nice if we could all use the scrubs.
Thank you. I think in terms of the monitoring period, Osama, how long are we thinking for that? Is that until the next committee, or until? Because I mean, I don't think I've made any secret that I'm quite pro fence, and I understand that we want to monitor and see how the PSPO goes, and we obviously, if there is new equipment coming in, want to be able to include that in the fence off area. I know we have had a range of very passionate views about fence or no fence. I hadn't realised it was going to generate such strong views from all sides, but if you could just talk through how long that consultation period, or the observation period is going to take for the PSPO to see if it's working.
Yep. So in consultation with the law enforcement team, we had suggested that we monitor up until the end of December. That can change. We can amend that in line with what the committee would prefer. And then off the basis of the data that we produce from that period, we could have a look and see, have we had any fixed penalty notices issued in the area? What has the interaction been like between professional dog walkers, non-professionals, and the LET team? Have we had any other sort of reports given as to what that behaviour has been like? And then on that basis, hopefully coupled up with the any suggestions for additional equipment, we would be able to come to the committee, not in December, but the one after that. I'm not sure which date that is right now. I don't think we've got one in the diary just yet. We would come with a proposal to either construct more fencing based on the data that we've generated from that PSPO, or potentially another option.
Thank you. I think that's the 6th of March is the meeting after, which is quite a long time. So maybe we could do something a bit sooner than that.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. I am happy to update outside of committee. The positive thing actually is that the quotations that I had got initially that I found another contractor for were below the 20,000 threshold, which means that it wouldn't necessarily need the full committee's approval if we did it all agree that we wanted fencing of just a new playground. But obviously we would need to incorporate all of the feedback from the additional consultation as well before then.
Thank you. Just as an aside, on the playground, the zip line, I still think needs looking at slightly because it's slightly set up wrong. And also the trampette seems to have like an entire swimming pool underneath. So every time you jump on it, there is a lot of water. I don't know what we can do about that, but is that something we could just take away and look at? Thank you. Stephen, and then Faye again.
Thank you very much. I think it would be great if we could accelerate the report back to the committee to come to the 12th of December, which is our next one, which is only 2 weeks ahead of the end of 2.5 weeks ahead of the end of December. My observation on the PSPO and the observation of it is that individual dog walkers are not great at observing it, and professional dog walkers are not observing it in general at all. They're walking with more than 4 dogs, and they're walking more than one together, so that you've got groups of 8 and 10 dogs, either completely together or nominally 5 meters apart. So maybe technically not together, but they're clearly together, and the dogs are not very well controlled. So I think that may come for the LAT discussion later, but that would be my observation and that of many people I've discussed it with. And much as I and my colleagues on the Friends of Wormwood Scrubs dislike fencing in general, we do think that fencing around the new part and the smaller children's part would be a worthwhile project.
Thank you, Stephen. Faye.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to follow up on my point, which is a bit vague before. I think the only thing that we're really asking for is just a small area that you can access and you know it's going to be free from dog poo. That's basically it. And the issue, because there's so many professional dog walkers who park on Braybrook Street and then release the dogs like onto the scrubs, all the dogs like run everywhere. Whether the people know the areas are like within the PSPO or not, there's nothing much they can really do about it in that area, because they just open the cars and the dogs go straight across that. And there's, families having picnics and stuff in that area. It's just a real shame, because it's like there's so much. It's such a big area, the Old Oak Estate, and this is like the only playground really. It is the only playground that anyone can use, and the community centre have closed their playground for members of the area for whatever reason. I think they've added something to their schedule that means it's no longer open to the public, which it used to be on Fridays, which is quite sad. Anyway, my point is that it serves a really big area, lots of people, and it's really silly that we can't just use it safely. That's my point.
Heard and understood. We'll take it back and I think look at what we can do with this. Councillor Stanton.
The proposed fencing, if we do agree to put it up, will that stop dogs who are off leads? Presumably it's designed to do that specifically. Yeah, okay, thank you.
I think it will be like standard fencing. I mean, obviously if they're show jumpers, that may be another issue.
Well, I was thinking more about, I can't remember what the fencing is meant to look like, but whether they could go underneath as opposed to over it. It might stop humans with dogs on leads, but not necessarily dogs off leads, because they have a habit of getting into small holes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point, thank you. I assume it will be fairly robust fencing. I'm just trying to think about the new fencing in Ramscourt Park around that dog-free area. Maybe something more like that than the fencing that's got lots of gaps in. Osama.
Yeah, so what we had initially consulted on was 1.1 metre high, low level wooden fencing. So it would be similar to what is used in other playgrounds, not necessarily Ravenscourt Park. But I'm happy to send some images of what we were proposing to install initially.
Great, thank you. Faye?
Sorry, I just had another thought as well. There's the other playground area next to Linford Christie Stadium, which isn't really a playground, it's like an athletics course, I think. I'm not entirely sure. And it's a large area, and it's currently got metal fencing around it. No one actually uses it except for people with their dogs, ironically enough. Is there any possibility, I don't know if anyone considered the possibility of repurposing of the fencing for that area and putting a portion of it or something around a portion of the Braybrook Street playground, and thus not hopefully incurring lots of costs. I don't know, just an idea.
Good idea. One we can look at. Thank you. Fine. Thank you very much. Good to hear a range of thoughts and views on the fencing. As I say, we have had a lot of responses from people about this, which is one of the wonderful things about the scrubs. It generates a huge amount of passion, often in sometimes unexpected areas, but always very welcome. Lovely. Right, I've lost my place on the papers of where we are. Item 9, Osama, the strategic planning and implementation of recommendations for the trust.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I've been working with a number of different local stakeholders to identify a set of strategic objectives on the scrubs. We all know we've had a number of different consultations in place on the management of the scrubs, the future of what we would like it all to look like, and how it's currently kind of set up to facilitate the charitable objects of the trust. And so we've had a number of recommendations that have come through these consultation exercises, some of which were sort of repeated on themselves. Other ones were quite insightful and sort of brought some new ideas to how we could improve facilities on site. Just to reiterate as well, our charitable objects, insofar as what the Charity Commission observes, is that we are in place in order to provide sporting and recreational facility for the inhabitants of the metropolis. And so what I'm working to do is to expand on those kind of basis of data gathering, to join up more closely with kind of smaller local groups that perhaps aren't so visible, and to kind of identify what it is that we would all like the trust to kind of dedicate its energies towards achieving. So I have a list of recommendations and progress towards those, which is hyperlinked in the manager's report. Obviously, you're more than welcome to go through that as well. Just some headlines from what we have achieved. We have improved access across 3 different entrances. That was kindly facilitated by funding from the OPDC, which we're glad to say that's been really well welcomed on site. We are in the process of developing a cafe on site. We have a couple of different options that we're looking at, one being the green cabin, which we're looking to survey properly and potentially generate a planning application for, and create a sort of community space around that. And we've also agreed the master plan, which has been a few years in the making, no mean feat, and has taken a lot of consultation, lots of co-design. And really, I think the development of a strategy for the trust is a really great opportunity to have a co-produced initiative, which is taking on board various different diverse views, which can be owned by the community and kind of be championed within the borough. And so the next steps towards achieving that kind of set of strategic objectives for me is to continue engaging with local stakeholders, institutional stakeholders as well in the area, understand the kind of future vision of the scrubs. So things like ensuring that the OPDC's local plan and access routes to and from HS2 are properly considered when we're thinking about how we are to develop a vision for the scrubs. The second stage will be to also pilot projects, which we've kind of commenced already. An example of what a kind of eco initiatives on the scrubs could look like that the trust could own could be kind of the trust's own forest school initiative, which I'm looking to raise some funds externally for, and get some local people involved in facilitating as well. Just on that note, one of our manifesto pledges in the borough is to have an ecology hub in the north of the borough, which the scrubs is obviously very well positioned to fulfill. So I can see that one of the objectives could be kind of facilitating ecological education for young people in the borough. The third step in that process would be to host a series of co-design workshops with community stakeholders, which is really a key element to ensuring that people are aware of what other people are saying. It's not just the same people who are coming up with the same suggestions, but it's a kind of diverse, reflective group of people who can talk quite articulately about what it is that they love the Scrubs for, how they like to see the Scrubs in the future, and you know, the community comes up with a set of what they would like the trust to focus on. So that will be running over the next 3 to 6 months. And supplementary to that, I have started putting together an organizational narrative which kind of talks about the history of the land, and a kind of view to kind of enmeshing a capital works scheme within that. And that could be a sort of 3-year plan of all the different projects that we need to undertake, additional to obviously what we've already approved within the master plan, to complement the master plan, and then to kind of move forward and have a proper view of what the trust is capable of achieving. And that will all be culminated in a report that I will send across to the committee. I'll present that in 2024. That will come along with a business plan as well, which will identify sort of prospects for how we can raise money in the future. A lot of my professional experience is in fundraising, so seeking those pots of money that we can use to, you know, enhance educational outcomes for people in the community is something that the trust is quite well positioned to do. And in line with those two kind of pieces of work are a set of operational policies, which I'm working on at the moment, and those will hopefully underline some of the business decisions that we take moving forward. So things like facilitating commercial events in the space, how we validate the process towards saying yes or no towards those events, and how we can expect to generate income from them as well. So that's just an update on that.
Thanks, Osama. And again, I think this is all really, really positive and a great way of thinking about how we do engage with our most important stakeholder, the broader community and users of the Scrubs, and a lot of the people who aren't currently using it, and how can we entice them to make the most of the incredible green space that we have in the borough. Stephen?
Yes, can I endorse your positivity, Chair, for having a proper plan going forward? That's first. Second, on an ecological hub, we should feel free to work with the ecology department at Imperial, which is full of good people, including the head of it, Tilly Collins, who you know, and who's kind of honorary advisor to the Friends, and I'm sure can provide other people who can help get it right. And thirdly, on the fundraising, which I think is a wonderful idea, I know you've told me that in order to achieve it, we need our own bank account, and I wondered how we were progressing towards that.
I think on that last point, Osama, are we not at the point where we now have our own bank account, or we are in the final stages of that, hopefully?
That's right, yeah, we're in the very final stages of getting that signed off. We just need the signature of the Director of Finance, and that is the last step. So hopefully that's the last barrier to being able to raise funds externally. And just on the point of Imperial College, we actually took Mark on a walk around the Scrubs, myself and Vicky, a little while ago, and Mark had actually mentioned the same thing. You know, we have a number of really well-respected institutions in the area who are very, very keen to do research on green interventions in health. You know, we've got a fantastic hospital who's a neighbour of ours, and so, you know, it's about linking up the desire to do research on these new initiatives, and the kind of the sets of people who are really keen to kind of capitalise on making the most of the space. So we will definitely be working with Imperial. I've got a couple of contacts myself to kind of work up research, but also to get them to validate what we've already kind of agreed upon as well. So yeah, that's part of the piece going forward too.
And I think this is an area, I mean, we're lucky with all of our officers, but we are particularly lucky with Osama, who is a natural connector and very good at building a very comprehensive stakeholder base and thinking about ways of bringing them together, and fundraising, kind of the magical skill that I think we all wish we had. So excited to see where this goes over the next few months and years. Thank you very much. Okay, Secret Cinema event. Osama, back to you.
Thanks again, Chair. Yeah, so we hosted Secret Cinema roughly this time last year. They came with a proposal to conduct a series of events on the Scrubs in summer 2023. And so that really hit a stumbling block when they realised the variety of different surveys that they would have to take on site in order to validate the planning permission that they would be seeking in order to host an event. And so, given the fact that it really takes a year to properly conduct these surveys, they have decided to pause on their proposal for an event in 2024. And they have told me that they would like to potentially host something, you know, if we are happy with it. And obviously in line with our events policy that I'm in the middle of developing as well. They'd like to do something in 2025. Really, that is very dependent on the ecological surveys that they're able to undertake. And so I'm still working with them in order to give them the right calendar and for them to be very clear on the fact that, you know, if we're conducting our own ecological baseline survey, that's great for us to validate what we have on site. But if you're proposing to do something additional, then you need to do those surveys. But in addition to that, you need to come up with some mitigations as well. So I think their proposal was good initially, but there's definitely some work to be done there. And we can also kind of take them back to the negotiation table with regard to, you know, the price, the number of people they would be looking to bring on site, and how to ensure that any impacts that you're creating doesn't affect the users who play football on the scrubs, who walk their dogs, who have any variety of different uses on the scrubs. And that's the aim in the future.
Thank you very much. Great, noted. Traffic management system, my personal passion project, which is nearly at an end. Thank you, Osama.
Yeah, that's me again. Thank you, Chair. So we are almost there with the traffic management system. We had a lot of confusion around where the system would get its power from, which has been quite a big learning piece for the Parks team. We have reflected on it, and myself and the officers involved, along with Simon as well, have really kind of put our heads together to make sure that we don't delay projects like this in the future. So that's the first thing to say. The second thing is that the UKPN are coming on site now. They're coming on the first week of November. Initially, they were meant to be coming on site this week, but they've had a number of different issues with their West London growth scheme, which is in the area, which they're actually using part of the substation on Scrubs Lane, the land which we lease to them, to conduct those works. So they're having to delay a little bit. But everything is in hand. The trenching and the ducting that the FM Conways came on site to undertake was completed, and now we just need to put the meter in and make sure that the wires are connecting properly to the power bank. The residents of Woodman's Mews have been in close contact with me regarding these works, and obviously, you know, we want to ensure that any disruption is mitigated and kept to a minimum. So yeah, they've been in close contact, and I'll keep them updated with any progress moving forward.
Thank you. Is there likely to be any further slippage beyond the 1st of November or first week of November?
I think it really depends on the UK Power Networks and the rest of their schedule. If there is any slippage, then I'll definitely let the committee know.
Fine. And do the residents know it slipped?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've been in touch with the RA.
Thank you. Are we paying UKPN to do this?
Yes, we have to pay them in order to create the meter, because it's additional to what we had already scoped out. I think there are a number of different bits to learn from in this. We didn't initially specify that we would need to pay UKPN for it because we assumed that we'd be tapping into the lighting network. So yeah, that's an additional cost, which once the works are completely done, I will send a update on how much exactly we've spent on this.
I was more thinking if we're paying them and it keeps on slipping, can we, I don't know, pay them less?
I can look into that.
Thank you. Stephen.
Thank you. I agree with you. I'm looking forward to this project being completed and stopping all the people who use that road who shouldn't be using it. But at the moment, you can drive from the Scrubs Lane car park round where the bollards will be. So is a new robust gate or blockage being erected to stop that?
There is currently some fencing blocking that. There's 2 panels of fencing up at the moment. There was on Sunday, so it may have come down since then.
I'm a week out of date, probably.
Fine, because it's been raised a few times and I raised it, so it was there a few days ago, so hopefully it is still there. But if we could just make sure maybe the law enforcement team or Assam can just check on that to make sure it's not been moved, that would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. The initial plan was to reinstate the fencing that had been removed. It's actually just sitting in the depot, so we're just going to put that back in once we've got the system up and running.
Great, thank you. But that's, yes, once it is up and running, that will obviously all be properly fenced off, so you can't just drive around, but in the interim there is the panel fencing to try and stop that from happening. Great, thank you. Fine, okay, lovely. Alfie, could you come in on the community safety update and talk us through your paper, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Okay, so you've all been given the document from the law enforcement team to read over, etc. So I'm going to give a quick overview of our document and what we've been up to since the last committee meeting. Okay, so this report outlines the roles and works undertaken by the law enforcement officers across Wormwood Scrubs, okay, from 13th of June to the 4th of October. So weapon sweeps conducted counts to 52. No weapons have currently been found. ASB patrols, total 51. That includes 1 drug dispersal. Dog issues, PSPO awareness. So the PSPO is now alive. 2 fixed penalty notices have been issued for the breach of the PSPO exceeding the 4-dog limit. Ongoing PSPO education will continue. Engagements, a total of 185 with various members of the public, such as joggers, hospital workers, gym users, etc. Fly tipping and waste. We have 1 incident of bags of garden waste dumped, which have been reported for clearance and removed. High visibility patrols in total equate to 232 across Wormwood Scrubs, Linford Christie gym area, all the cops and the nature areas of the Scrubs. Illegal encampments, there has been 2. So we have served 2 eviction notices, papers from travellers who occupied the Hammersmith Hospital car park since June 2023. Abandoned motorbikes removed, a total of 3 unidentified motorbikes, which have been reported abandoned, possibly stolen, or were collected by the owners themselves or via the police. Locking duties, so 79 locking duties to date. So the yellow gate off Scrubs Lane and checking the height barrier on Artillery Lane. We've had reports of 5 rough sleepers. 5 rough sleepers reports on the sites. However, no persons present when we've attended these locations, just the tents. Tents removed. 2 tents have been removed by us, which have been reported through. The others have been obviously been removed by the persons who put them there initially. Dog show, the Let officers attended the Wormwood Scrubs dog show. So that's regarding the high. So in terms of the high visibility patrols in total, so a total of 641 various interactions over this period. They say we're increasing public reassurance and safeguarding work across the whole board, engaging with the professional dog walkers. This is a big one and one of the major issues at the moment as the PSPO is in. I say the height barriers at Hammersmith Hospital car park site. The height restriction barrier has now been installed on Hammersmith Hospital car park site to prevent traveller encampments, which recently has been proved effective as well. And 1 unlicensed music event, a community protection warning was issued to a male on Wormwood Scrubs. Continuous engagement with residents, safeguarding of the council assets, etc. Part locking duties, as you know, we undertake them duties as well. So with regards to that, that is what we have been up to and engaging with since the last committee meeting.
Thank you very much, Alfie. Any questions, comments from the committee? Councillor Stanton.
Just one very short question, and thank you for that. Regarding the illegal encampment by the travellers, presumably when they were served the eviction notices, they left?
They did indeed, that's correct.
Yeah, thank you. That was it.
Thank you. Stephen?
Yes, on that issue, committee members may wish to know that there are travellers at present on Hammersmith and Fulham property on the Little Scrubs, which is now being dealt with, I'm told. It's all a bit third hand, but I worry that they will move from the Little Scrubs to the Big Scrubs when they're evicted from there. And I hope that the necessary measures are being taken.
Thank you. Simon?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And just to reassure the committee and Stephen, we have very good intelligence and intel between the neighbouring borough that obviously manages Little Wormwood Scrubs on behalf of the council, and we share intel across other neighbouring boroughs about movement of travellers and where they're going, and hence the question about the fencing on Wormwood Scrubs Lane, etc. We've been driving or parking vans over that vulnerable area to make sure that the travellers don't encroach on the land, having done all the good work at the hospital side of the site and the access that they used to frequent quite a bit. So very much aware and keeping all eyes and ears open for any movement, and hopefully they will not arrive onto the Big Scrubs.
Thank you. I think one of the unusual things about our site is about the site of Wormwood Scrubs is it is obviously right next to a maternity hospital, a hospital and a prison. And we are obviously aware that sometimes when we do have travellers visit the Scrubs, it is because they have got a health issue or someone giving birth or complications. So I'd just like to commend the officers on always being quite sensitive about when those situations arise and when we do have travellers on site and approaching them that compassionately. So thank you. Faye.
Just a trivial point, the website linked on the report in the manager's report doesn't work. The link posted for the team website. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, anything else on the law enforcement team? Thank you very much, Alfie, to you and your team for all the work that you do. Thank you. Okay, the financial position, Kelly, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Kelly Gooch, Head of Finance for the Environment Department at the Council. So in your papers, you'll see the detailed financial position for Q2 of this financial year, which is April to September. To summarise, our forecast net income is £291,000 this year. That's almost £1.2 million worth of spend and almost £900,000 worth of income. Income is forecast to be 33,000 better than budget, and that's really due to the introduction of weekend parking charges and also the benefit of high interest rates at the moment, meaning we're earning more on our cash balances. Expenditures forecast to be £71,000 more than budget, and that's due mostly to some of the items we talked about earlier. So the new fencing around the new children's playground, so £20,000 there. Improvements to the dog exercise area, that's another 20,000, and installation of 2 new bicycle racks at 15,000. So overall, the net forecast for the year is 38,000 worse than our budget. But of course, our budget is not set to fully spend everything that we are earning. So we have some room to allow for that. So the forecast variance at Q2 is broadly in line with what we were forecasting at Q1. There's been a very small £70 adverse movement overall. Income's improved by nearly £12,000. And that's mainly due to actual income on pay and display being better in June, July and August than we were forecasting. Conversely, other expenditure has increased this month by almost equal £12,000. And that's mostly due to increased costs of security barriers, £30,000. And that's partially offset by a reduced forecast on the Pony Centre grant of £10,000 and the removal of CCTV capital works of £8,000 from the forecast. So very similar overall as to what we reported last quarter. And then in terms of the trust funds, so we're still awaiting the audit of last year's accounts, but subject to that, we're continuing to forecast general unrestricted income funds of almost £1.5 million at the end of this financial year. And that's an increase of nearly £300,000 or 20% compared to last year. So a good healthy position. Just going back to the earlier question we had on the contribution to the stadium work. So I have checked the trust's accounts and I can see we don't depreciate our assets, and that's really because they just have a nominal value and because of their restricted use. I will check the Charity Commission regulations just to see about asset enhancements, but I think what I'm expecting is that 250,000 to be treated as a reduction in cash this year. So you'll see that reflected in the next quarterly forecast on the funds. So those are the main points that committee are asked to note as at Q2, but I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you very much, Kelly. Any questions on our accounts? Oh, thank you. The CCTV works. This isn't actually a question for you, Kelly, but the CCTV works, are those now not happening? Or were those happening and they are no longer going in the summer?
Thank you, Chair. So we were identifying certain locations that we would need more CCTV. Initially, the hospital had asked that we put an additional camera nearer the car park, and that actually related to the traveller incursions. But since we've managed to put the security barrier in place, they are able to monitor the area that they need to from their own CCTV, which means that we don't necessarily need to add an additional camera in. Also, it's come to my attention that we can actually just apply for temporary CCTV through the council if we need a particular camera to be placed in a location to monitor certain behaviour. So we don't necessarily need to spend money on a permanent installation if we know we need to spend, if we know we need to get a camera in place for something quite particular.
Thank you. Faye?
The dog exercise area was mentioned in the budget, and I just wondered if those improvements were still going ahead, and if so, when.
Farmer?
Thank you, Chair. Yep, so we have budgeted for that item, and really what we'd like to do is ensure that we have the swale, which is due to be constructed in front of the dog exercise area, have that constructed first, so we can properly scope out what the distances would look like. Initially, we're thinking about having kind of like an extension of the area, but with new fencing, a new gate, some sort of boot scrapers as well in the area. It says it's kind of earmarked as just dog exercise area, but it's more improvements for dog walkers to have better facilities on site. So we could also factor the cost of the tap, which we were in communication about, which is a lot more expensive than we initially thought it would be. But the kind of silver lining there is that we are purchasing another tap in another park, and that means that we can get a slight reduction from the supplier if we buy two. So we're just going to buy both and have one sitting in the depot. In terms of timing, I am unable to give you an indication as to when we're able to start construction, but once we have planning permission from the master plan and we have a construction plan moving forward for the swales, then I can give you a bit more of an indication.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions on that? Fine. I think that brings us to the end of the meeting. Dates of the future meetings are for the 12th of December, where we've got a number of items to come back with, and then the 6th of March. Is there any AOB before I close the meeting? Fine. All right. Oh, Stephen.
This is the first meeting at which we've not had Steve Hollingworth, and I wondered whether it would be appropriate for the committee to record and send our thanks to him for his work, good work in managing the scrubs alongside other officers over quite a period of time. Thank you, Chair.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That is a very good point, Stephen. I think we've all very much enjoyed working with Steve over the years. He was brilliant at being patient with me whenever I came up with a crazy scheme that I wanted to do on the scrubs. Statues of myself, he was always very patient about dealing with, and very tactful about saying no. So yeah, I think he will be missed, although we are delighted to be joined by the new team here and their beautiful faces. Thank you. Just to be very clear, that was a joke about the statue. I know I like to throw that into every meeting. I genuinely don't want a statue of myself on the Scrubs and will not be abusing this position to get one, just for clarity and for anyone watching. Brilliant. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Great to see you. Thank you so much for attending, and see you at the next meeting.